Welcome to Change the Narrative. I'm your host, JD Fuller, an African-American licensed psychotherapist, professor, diversity coach, consultant, and author. We talk about the isms. We talk about the phobias, anything that marginalizes and oppresses. Everything we are not and everything we are is because of fear. Through a mental health lens, we'll have difficult conversations with celebrity guests, political activists, and everyone in between. Our mind will tell us whatever we want to believe, but the truth lives in the body, and that's where change occurs. Are you ready to change the narrative? Martin Drux. I screwed it up, right?
No, perfect. Very good.
Oh, really?
Yes, yeah, very good. Excellent. Yeah.
Oh, wow. I nailed it. I wasn't expecting to.
No, most people are going silent on the X, and that's a big mistake because that's the coolest letter in the name. No, very nice.
I appreciate that. Well, I'm so happy to meet you. And, it's taken a bit of time. You've been very patient. So I want to thank you very much for that.
No, I'm really excited to be here, and I'm still figuring out if you really wanted to have me on the call. You had just 100th episode, I think, and
I'm over 100 now.
Yeah, so many exciting guests there, and I'm very excited and very flattered to be part of your podcast.
Thank you so much. So let's start with the obvious. This is going to take us a little bit through your journey, but I want to start with the obvious. You're a white male in corporate America. What was the catalyst for discovering your new passion?
Well, technically I am working for an American company, but of course I'm based in Europe. So my role is a European role. I'm German. I live in Germany, but I'm still a white male working for corporate America. It was a great question. I would say that I've been in a multinational, traveling a lot. And then Corona came, and all of a sudden it came to a standstill. And, like many of us had more time to reflect on who we are and what we do. And I was looking for more purpose. And so I started connecting, I would say in the beginning, almost randomly with people that I found interesting. So, and so I started conversations, and I met and connected with a lot of great people. And I thought and then that started, all kinds of research and engagement. And then of course, during that time or before that time, you had things like George Floyd and a couple of other things. And I think that started building an interest and an engagement. And I think there wasn't a particular day or moment or that triggered it, but it was probably the fact that I was sitting at home instead of traveling, and I had more time to reflect on things.
So I really appreciate a couple of the points that you made there. One in particular is, during the pandemic, we all had to revisit the value of life and the purpose of life. And of course, I started the podcast then. You started your journey. When you think about it, what did it bring up for you, just emotionally and in terms of mental health, for the reflection? Like, I get the fact that the pandemic had us on lockdown and there was nothing we can do. But internally, what happened? What was shaken for you?
Very, very difficult to say because it was a very intense period, right? Because the normal day-to-day life before 2020 was, you were distracted all of the time. And all of a sudden, right? And all of a sudden, there wasn't a distraction. The gym closed. I started running because, the only thing to do was I never did outdoor running. I did do that. And a lot was going on around the world, but not so much was going on in my world because all of a sudden I was there. And so I don't know. I don't think that mental health wise that there was anything particular. So I didn't get depressed or sad, but it was something that I needed something probably to really keep my mind entertained and engaged, because normally I would be somewhere and I would meet people and would do things, and all of a sudden it was a complete makeover. And so partly I went into physical exercise, so as in mostly running and hiking, walking, but the other part was engaging with people, because the thing that really stressed me out is that I like to network and meet people. And all of a sudden that was really, really toned down. There was social distancing, and you were encouraged basically not to travel, not to go out, not to mingle. And the virtual reality actually helped me a lot with that. But then I started meeting people, engaging with people that I wouldn't have met otherwise. And I really started building a completely new part of my life, a new part, and then it's really interesting. And that journey is still going on because I couldn't continue doing that now, meeting people online. Yeah.
No, I'm sorry to interrupt you. You finished that thought?
No. I just thought it's really something that I really developed a passion for, because what I really like is the opportunity to participate in somebody else's lived experience. Learning through that, learning through looking through the lens of other people, because something that you see in a virtual world that could go both directions. You could be more hateful. You could be very quickly passing judgment, getting very aggressive and aggravated. But I like to do the other way around, to really look and understand what is somebody else's reality. And I find that very, very fascinating.
You said something there. It sounded like you're used to the external process of networking. For a minute there, you had an internal process of networking. Like you had to get to know you in a whole different way. That's very interesting. That idea that because you spend so much time traveling and meeting and connecting with people in your work world, all of a sudden it all came to a stop and you really had to get to know who you were like this new way of being. So that's interesting. Thank you for breaking that down. That was helpful.
Yeah. So it could be scary, but it wasn't too scary. It's actually quite important, I think, that you sometimes have this kind of break. And
particularly if you like who you are at the end of the process, then it's all been worth it. You said, meeting new people and how it has changed your life. Prior to that, what was your exposure to different cultures where you grew up? What was that like for you growing up?
Well, if I go very, very back where I grew up, so I come from a small spa town in Western Germany, which was extremely German, white German. But I have to say, so one of my first friends, like kindergarten time girlfriends, she was actually a Kenyan girl. And I remember her name, Michu, and we were about 4 or 5. So that was my first exposure. She was a daughter of a Kenyan doctor, and they were living in the same house. And I would say you had, I think, a couple of times ago, you had the Jolly Good Ginger, or if you remember the North Carolina, the guy from North Carolina grew up in a racist family and so on. I cannot. Sorry, lights went out for a second.
Go ahead.
So I cannot share that because I don't have that story, because so I didn't grow up in a racist family or something, but it wasn't a very particular one. But I know that from my early childhood on, my family always had contact with, let's say, families from, let's say, Turkish background or Italian background, and so on. And so there was that kind of exposure. But at the same time, especially my father didn't like to travel, so I didn't travel. So my exposure to different cultures was really resorting to movies. And it wasn't then until I myself started to earn my own money and start working that I personally got more interested. And I think I like to think that whenever it comes to different cultures, there's a spectrum of rejection to curiosity, right? So and I think the fact that I come from a very tolerant and open family, but then at the same time never having had an exposure to that much to different cultures or traveling, it created that curiosity from an early age. So that when I meet people that are different, it would not trigger fear first. It was more like, I would like to learn more about you. And later on in my professional life, I had a lot of people that were kind of like that kind of started that. When I think about it, it's that kind of journey. But it started very slowly with hardly any exposure.
Yeah, without any, but you gravitated towards difference. So you were on your path early on. You said something that I was going to ask you about, which is being who you were and growing up where you did. What was your biggest fear in your body? What did you fear, or did you have any fears that you're aware of?
Yeah, actually, I was quite a scared little person. But I think I was afraid of a lot of things, but probably the unknown, but not the unknown as in different cultures, but basically getting out into the world and then what would be out there. And but then the curiosity kind of got stronger. But it's I think that's a lot of the times that fear comes from the unknown, that you have a picture in your head. And so I'm going somewhere, I might get robbed. I remember when I was one of my first jobs, I got transferred to Philadelphia, and I lived in Philadelphia. And my as I said, my father didn't like to travel, but then finally my parents came over to visit me. And I think my father really, he had to really overcome his own fears. And he had these images of, going to New York and getting probably robbed the moment he steps out of the underground and so on. And of course, when we went there, it wasn't anything like that. And he fell in love, and they came back. And so we did it again. So it's that kind of part where that kind of feels unknown. It's like putting pictures in your head based on maybe information or misinformation. And, and then it's just kind of like, going on a plane and you have in your head the picture of the image of a plane crash or something, right? But you still do it because you want to go somewhere.
Yeah, no, that I like that perspective of emphasizing that the unknown can be scary, and sometimes the reality, particularly when you have access and privilege, it may be just fear itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're not fearing being chased down by a cop. You're fearing what you don't know. And your father was a perfect example of that, and how exposure is so important. That's really relevant. Can you explain? Okay, I'm going to shift gears a little bit just because I want to break down what it is that you do. Can you explain what a multinational executive who manages cross-cultural teams for a global U.S. headquarters consulting firm is, and why networking is so important?
That sounds a mouthful, right?
So
I work for a multinational, insurance brokerage and consulting firm. And so really, it's a very simple that we are insurance broker, and the clients that we look after, that especially my team looks after, are multinational clients. So they operate in different countries. So let's say you take any kind of multinational company, and they want to control their global insurance costs and coverage. They have operations in different countries. And so the team that I'm looking after across Europe is actually looking after the operations in Portugal, in Italy, in Turkey, and so on. And so, of course, the local teams are local teams, but then I'm working with them across the different countries. And I have a central team that is actually, kind of supporting and managing that. But there, I'm really trying to bring in talent from across the world. I'll give you an example. One of my colleagues, she's Thai. She worked for our operation in Thailand for 13 years, married a German guy, and now she's working with me. I had for 18 months, a colleague from China. She came over really for learning, how we work in Europe. And now she's going back and working with Europe. So I know I don't want to get too technical, but it's really, working, basically a cross-cultural network, delivering service and so on. But that's actually what the part where I really started embracing diversity and inclusion is, where I thought, like, you have that. We are a stock listed company. So as part of ESG, we have to look into, how we do it environmental and social and governance, and especially on the S. Yes, we have a lot of great things going on, but part of that is because we have to. But I thought that with the role that I'm having, embracing diversity and inclusion is actually a business imperative. So because because we are working across borders, cross cultures, let's say we have one global program that we need to execute across 85 countries around the world. And we have to work with people in Peru and in the Philippines and in Australia. So working in those teams, you need to be culturally sensitive. You have to have that awareness. So I try to make that a business case rather than a tick the box exercise, and we have to do it. This is something that we we need to do that. It's actually, even if we didn't care about it, I do care about it. Even if we didn't care about it, it's something that really makes us better and stronger. So that's where I'm coming from.
Thank you for breaking that down. It made much more sense when you explained it. And so networking actually is everything that you do. And what do you think the key, I want to go back to what you said, but I also want to just find out what is the key element of networking? Because believe it or not, I don't network well.
No?
So what? No, I don't. Tell me what the key element to networking is for you.
I would say, not sure, I don't want to be too philosophical, but it's a love of people and the curiosity in other people and the idea of sharing your own life experience with other people. So, as I'm getting older, some of my posts, if you go into LinkedIn, some of my posts is when I post a picture that I took, I don't know, with somebody 25 years ago. And then our paths cross again and we take that same picture again. And so I put that into comparison. So there's an old picture with me, very skinny, very nerdy with a lot of hair. And then me now, still very nerdy, but no hair. And so it's this whole part. And then we say, remember we did that. Or right now, so I'm a big fan of classical rock music. So I have a couple of friends. Some go back to my school days and we go to concerts together. Some of the bands are still from the old days. And it's kind of like, bringing your own life into experiencing your own life together with other people. That's something like, so it's very difficult to explain, but it's really this whole thing about being curious in other people, but also sharing your life and experiencing your life with other people. I think that's what it comes down to.
That's great. No, that's great. That's great. Okay. So since the pandemic, what do you think has changed the relationship between employers and employees? What's been your close observation of what has changed?
That's a tough one. I mean, there are a couple of things going on. So we have that whole word of war for talents. So I think there's more, I think it became more of a, kind of like a seller's market in a way that if you want to call employees the seller of their talent. But also people probably, I'm not the only one who started reflecting on purpose of life, right? Because the world came to a standstill. And so the corporate world keeps going very fast, bigger profits, more growth, what have you. But then I think some people said like, wait a second, there has to be more to life than that. And so we had, I think it was called the Great Resignation, something like that. Where some people said like, I'm getting out of that treadmill. And so I would say that was that's a big change. So I think that to become more sustainable as an employer, the employer needs to become more sincere in terms of, this is really what we stand for. So purpose becomes more relevant. People want to have more of a work-life balance. And I think especially, so in Europe, we have already a couple of things that are very different from the American reality. So where you have to work very, very hard, right? So, yeah. But maybe you will experience some of that at some, of course, if you have to work 3 jobs in order to, make ends meet, it's a very luxurious conversation to have. It's a very privileged conversation. But it seems that, there's, especially now in my industry, there's a high demand for talent. And, so people can almost say like, maybe I don't like that job, but I can get paid better. So I go to that company for 40% more. So that's right now a very luxurious, I would say, situation. Again, if you have a certain job that you, where there's still more supply of workforce than demand, you probably have, still a different reality. But that's what I'm seeing in the insurance industry.
I think that's relevant. This idea of supply and demand, but also what you said. I remember when I was growing up, the thing that was most important was how many years you had on the job. Now people will bring you resumes with, 5 jobs in 5 years and won't even flinch. So it is a matter of, particularly if you're in a particular field, especially, you'll see that that's the reality. People aren't looking for longevity. They're looking for the best plan. And also, like you said, sincerity, or people putting action behind what it is they profess to be. So I think that's insightful. What has changed in terms of recruitment? Like what drives the recruitment policy or practice?
I think that, well, again, I'm talking about the insurance industry from a very European lens. I think that over time, so right now, people want to see more value, actually, of of the lead, like the leaders talking about more content, more showing what their values are, what they stand for. So I think that the brand itself is not as important as it used to be, the brand of a company. I believe that the leaders actually, so you had to have a big growing mistrust in politicians around the world. So I think that now corporations have become a little bit more of the trusted institutions. I think if you see more and more of the leaders actually standing up for certain things, for values, and give an idea that if I work for you, what does that mean other than, your big firm, you're growing fast and will make a lot of profit, but also what do you stand for, you as a leader? I think that has become quite important.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And it's not just for insurance. I mean, you're speaking through an insurance lens, but you are speaking globally in terms of a lot of different businesses and organizations. People want to know that leaders, not just talk the talk, but they walk the walk, because of the challenges of hanging on to employees. Absolutely. So you've talked about how important, the whole diversity, inclusion. I'm losing track of the letters. I'm not going to lie to you, but all of the DEIJ.
You're Mr. B. You're Mr. B there.
I put the B at the B. I put the B at the end on that one. But the whole diversity and inclusion, relevance and elevation is starting to decline. What do you know about that? What do you think about that?
Well, again, this is I'm following U.S. politics a little bit, but I'm where I'm coming from is not really a political side. It's more about I want to make sure that we are tapping into the best talent, and we try to look for building a system where everyone has kind of like equal opportunity, and that's very ambitious. That's ambitious enough. I think where it comes down is when you are politicizing it and give it a bad context. Because all I'm saying is so we want to make sure that if you look at the top leadership, especially insurance, is still guilty as charged, is predominantly white, straight, male, what have you. And so the further up you go, and I think the problem started probably 10, 15, 20 years ago when you didn't start building up that talent, that diverse talent pool. And I think when it comes, when I hear it comes, it turns down. I think I'm not sure. It's probably it's probably a political pushback, because what it is ultimately is probably a fear of privilege, saying like, oh, people want to take away my role, or that means that basically I want to have that job, but I'm not getting that job because a Black woman is getting that job, because now we need to fill that quota, and to me that is complete nonsense. Because, first of all, as a white male, I should have the confidence to say, like, if I'm the best qualified, I'll still get to that job. But it's more about giving the people that haven't been given the chance to get there the equal opportunity to compete for it. And I think that it's just a narrative. And I think your show is called Change the Narrative. I think we need to change the narrative here. Is that it's really more about looking at the entire talent out there and giving equal opportunity, and really trying to get the best to the top. And the truth is, before white male should get too excited and too nervous about it, it's still, if we look at our top management, it's still very much dominated by white men. And so and I don't think that is simply because actually there was a very fair and square competition for all of these positions throughout the years. And that's why, in this fair competition, you know what? It's all white men who succeeded. No, it's because there is a system behind it. And I think that's, and I find the world more interesting where there is a fair competition. I think about the Olympics. I think about, you just have, Olympic Games, a competition of the best athletes, and you kind of disqualify, a certain amount of people, a certain group of people from competing. It wouldn't be fun anymore. So I think that's the same thing.
No, I agree with you completely. I would add one tweak to that, which is the reality is that it can never be equal because of the access gap. Because of the fact that, you look in America, I'm not sure how it is in other countries, but a little bit in other countries. I know a little bit about other countries, but what I'm speaking specifically about is the lack of equity, right? You can, it starts so young, this idea of like in elementary school when kids in impoverished communities don't have access to the tools to help them compete effectively. How is it ever going to be an equal opportunity? It almost has to be that you have to change the expectation for people who had less resources. That doesn't mean they're less capable. It means they had less resources. That's the rub that people just can't wrap themselves around. When we talk equity, it's not giving me higher steps to give me a faster pace. It's trying to give me opportunities I never had access to. And that seems to be such a difficult concept for people to wrap themselves around. So I appreciate how you broke that down. I also just think it's important to include that piece as well. Does that make sense?
Sure, absolutely. And I think that's a good point. That goes way beyond, let's say, something that I could do within my work, because, thinking about access to education, access to safety and security, to healthcare. There are a couple of things that, where there isn't even a fair start to begin with. And you're absolutely right.
I think the other thing, though, is that you are doing a lot about it. And I just think that the lens needs to be shifted a little bit to say, is this person the best candidate, or are they the best candidate with the resources they had? And with investment in them, they can be the best candidate of all. So I think just that little shift provides an adjustment to what you're already doing. And I appreciate what you're doing. I think it's important.
Thank you. And there's something, so just on that point, if you look at some of the towns, so if you look into Europe right now, and some of the things are, you have the Gen Z conversations about, a younger generation that's actually pretty well off. Again, we're talking about European reality right now. And so I'm sometimes I'm engaging with talents from, and LinkedIn gave me the opportunity to connect with people from Africa, Latin America, Eastern Europe, Asia. And you have people that are very, very, actually very hungry. They want to do so much more. So actually you might have a completely different, motivation out there to really go to reach for the stars. So even if you want to have a more competitive landscape, that's another reason to look into talents from other parts of the world, because they are not, kind of like so kind of almost, let's say, content with everyththing. They really still want to prove to the world what they can do, and I think that would really give it a fresh new approach.
Absolutely. I agree with you completely. And speaking of your international lens, what's your perspective on why the world has such a prevalence of anti-Black racism specifically? It's pretty prevalent in the world. What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, that's very difficult to say, because I would say when I talk about racism, it is something that means something slightly different in every part of the world. Because I'm German, so I grew up in the aftermath of Second World War, where racism was predominantly focused at Jewish people, the Sinti and Roma community, and so, but I think that it almost feels like, in general, that the color of the skin, the darker it gets, it has a negative connotation. And it's very, I'm not sure it's funny or sad, but when I grew up, so I grew up in just a very white environment and just compared myself to other white kids. And so back then, getting a 10 was actually almost like a luxurious good. So people would, after summer break, would come back and say, "Oh, you got a nice 10," and I wouldn't have a 10. I'm having almost like an Irish 10. So it's like, and so I didn't realize, and so I was always kind of embarrassed of being that super white. But until I realized that no, actually, if you get around the world, it could be in Asia, it could be across Europe or something, the darker you get, it's more and more negative. And I don't know what the source of it is. I saw one YouTube video just the other day where actually it says that the idea of racism and anti-black, anti-dark narrative goes back actually to really to a Portuguese person. I'm not sure that you heard about it, but who, in the context of exploring the idea of slavery, created the concept of race. And so, because that was when it started, when those traders tried to look into free labor, looking into Africa. So they started describing the African race as something that was of a lesser value. So that would justify. Right. And then I'm not sure that, again, I would have to back it up with the facts, because there was one of the TED Talks that I watched the other day. But it is probably something that was created in that context, and then it built on that. But I'm not I'm not a scientist to really say, like, what is the reason behind it, because I think it's man-made nonsense. I don't think that you grow up or you're being born being a racist. That comes back to again, I really enjoyed your interview with a Jolly Good Ginger, where he talks about the thing that basically at home there's a permanent basically narrative around negative about black people and using the N-word and so on in a very casual way, which created this sentiment. But at the same time, coming back to my Kenyan girlfriend, I know many years ago, we played together, and I never really thought of it as something. Yeah, of course you see that, okay, you look darker than me, but there's nothing if your parents don't say, like, oh no, that don't play with them. It's just something that you take for granted. And so I think that really it is man-made, and it's something that we need to break that narrative. And I don't know, well, I think it's by constantly educating. Personally, I find the most interesting part is engaging with people that are different. That's my curiosity, coming back to that spectrum. But that's really, I don't know. I find it in general, I find it extremely painful, and especially in a world where we are facing, maybe global extinction because of, for many reasons, lack of resources and wars and, global warming, what have you. We have more important things to do than to look at the color of other people's skin and put each other down. That's my view, but I think it's so ingrained in some cultures that it's difficult to change it. It takes a while.
So, what do you think about America? What are people in Germany and your neck of the woods saying about America and Americans these days?
Well, I have to say that I lived in America. I work for an American company. I have many American friends, so I may not be representative. I would say, some would say, oh guys, you're crazy. Because the perception, again, I don't like to talk politics, but the perception of your previous president is, obviously not a positive one outside of your country. The whole thing of shootings and, mass shootings basically on a weekly basis. So I was in Atlanta the other day, and then the final day that all the events were, canceled because there was some shooter on the loose and so on. If that part, it's very difficult. But at the same time, there's a great admiration. America has always been seen as a very strong force, to also bring good things to the world and being the driving force, being innovative. So it depends on who you are. So I personally, I love America, and I find it a fascinating country. It's not that I agree with everything, but at the same time, I think it is a force of good in the long run, but it has a lot of things to cope with.
Yeah, you definitely have an expansive perception, so that I think that's what informs you. I am curious, particularly when other countries have travel warnings about coming to America. I mean, that's something new. So that says a lot to me. So, clearly we have a lot of work to do to not think so highly of ourselves as a country. And by ourselves, I don't mean me, just to be clear. I want to cover a couple more things before I let you go. And again, I appreciate you staying up late to talk with me about these topics and sharing your journey. I saw when early on you sent me a book, and it's written in German, and you said it's unfortunate that it's written in German because it was such a powerful book for you. And it's by David Mayonga.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. And you said it has global relevance. Can you tell me how it has global relevance?
Yeah. So David Mayonga is a child of African immigrants, a German, and he grew up in the Bavarian countryside. So Bavarian countryside, we always compare Bavaria to Texas. So it's a very particular case. And so when he was a boy, I mean, the title of the book translates to a N-word, must not sit next to me. And that goes back to an experience that he had when he was on his first day in kindergarten. The whole class was sitting on chairs in a circle, and he wanted to sit down on the only empty chair, and the white boy next to him covered the chair and said that to him. So that was something that he could not comprehend at the time. And again, it comes back to this conversation about how you put those thoughts into your children's heads. And he talks about his childhood in a rural town in Bavaria, Germany, and so on. I think the global relevance on that is that it's really about how you harm your children if you put that into their heads, because the story that he experienced there is not a German story. It is, his particular story is a German story, but that's a story that a child could experience in France and in Thailand and anywhere in the world. And that's why, unfortunately it is only available in German. So he's a musician and also a moderator for the Bavarian public radio station. And he also said that, for instance, he, when he is in his in his studio and so on, he's in the lobby or somewhere, and it's always him, the security always comes to him and says, like, what are you doing here, and so on. And so that's the part, again, coming back to the point of, I look at you and I look at the color of the skin and I treat you differently. And so that's why, and I saw him on different TV shows and interviews, and I thought that, it's a very, it's just kind of sad, but at the same time, I'm very glad that he wrote that book and I shared it. Yeah.
I wish they would get it translated. I hope they do that. And I appreciate you sharing that with me early on.
You can learn German if you want to.
Oh, wow. Probably not so much. Well, Martin, I'm not going to lie. It's difficult for people in the global majority like myself to believe a white male is passionate about social justice. I feel you, and that's important to me. I may not be a great networker, but I do feel people. And when I feel people, I like to be connected to them. So thank you so much for staying connected. I appreciate it a lot. What would you say to people who have difficulty trusting that this is the journey you're on and the path you're going to stay on?
Oh, that's very difficult, because trust, how do you trust the person? It's like basically through knowing people and seeing that they are consistent in what they're doing. I would say in one thing that I hope that whatever I say, it's not different from what I'm saying tomorrow or what I'm saying. Of course, sometimes it changes, but I think this journey I've been on, it's been a journey for a long, long time. And people that don't trust a person, to try to understand or try to get to know them better until you can back up the lack of trust. There's no easy answer to that, because it's, because whether you trust me or not is really up to you. And all I can do is basically being authentic and doing what I'm doing. And yeah, so I'm very passionate about all of what we discussed, and I'm glad it shows, and I hope that other people also try and change, their perspective on life, that they try to open up to other people. There's really one funny anecdote there. So I'm watching sometimes on my free time, I'm watching YouTube videos, and there's one inspiring story, and that I watched over the weekend. And you've heard of the Westboro Baptist Church, that crazy picket fencing cult from Kansas. And so one of that is all one family, and one of the daughters was actually she became the marketing person, going on Twitter and so on. And then there were people starting to contacting her on Twitter, and they didn't just call her names or something. They started to show kind of like how the teaching of the Westboro Baptist Church was, contradicting itself, and also the teaching of the Bible and what have you. And so she started to questioning her own family, and she engaged more and more with one particular guy. And ultimately she left that cult and married the guy who actually started. And now she's going out there and she's actually educating, and because that is clearly a case of brainwashing, right? I mean, that's a family cult that preaches hate and that puts hate into and then they just go out there and talk about hate and insult people. And there was somebody who really invested time into that woman, into the daughter of the family, to really convince her. She came up. She basically left her own family behind to now start educating about how this whole thing started. And it's not about hating each other or calling each other names. It's really investing into people, because I think that some of the most hateful people, think about the Jolly Good Ginger. He looks like a perfectly decent guy, very passionate about what he does. But think about how he grew up and what was put into his head. And it took actually I think it was his mother who then married a black husband, and then they had children. So actually going to that community and seeing that, oh, wait a second, that is not what has been put into my head. So it's that exposure that's important. And coming back to what you said in the beginning of this part of the conversation is, it's very difficult to believe a white person being engaged in this, or being passionate about social justice. I would say that, I don't want to live in a world that is just giving privilege to one group, even if I'm part of that group. Because ultimately then, if other parts of the group do not have access to education, to wealth, to happiness, they will turn violent, and it becomes a safety issue. It becomes, it doesn't become a nice world to live in. And so there is that's not the driving force behind what I'm doing, but I think that I'm just having a vision of a world where we all live together very, very, very peacefully. And there's one, talking about positive influences. My ex-boss, unfortunately, passed away 4 years ago in the 60s. He was a German guy, white German guy. He moved to Canada, a young guy in 67, and he moved to Nova Scotia, and he started dating his future wife, who came from Barbados. And so in 1967 in Nova Scotia, he was basically in the Caribbean kind of community. His management learned about it and basically said, like, you have to stop that. And he actually then, he and Nina, his future wife, said, okay, they moved to Toronto first and then to Germany. So they said, like, no, our love is stronger. Kind of like the whole story of loving, right? And he was one of the many, many positive influences that where I just saw, like, how powerful true love is, and how being together creates a better world than just, protecting your own privilege. That's really, kind of like what drives me. And,
we grow in relationship with each other. That's the key. And I think the way that you show people that you are who you are is with consistency. And you have consistently, shown me who you are, and I see what you are about, and I appreciate it. And you were just so delightful, and to stay up this late and have a conversation with me, that's not always easy. I just want to acknowledge your willingness to do that. And my questions are not easy, and you are authentic. So I appreciate you bringing your authentic self to have this conversation with me. Please let everyone know where they can find you. What is your social media handle, if you have one, and your LinkedIn?
It's mostly on LinkedIn. So I have only existing in two virtual worlds. One is LinkedIn, which is just Martin Drux. It's one word, Martin Drux, Drux. And the other one is also with my name, is on Facebook. But Facebook is really more to embrace my passion for rock music. So that's
great.
That's because that's something that I don't put on LinkedIn. And but yeah, it's my LinkedIn account where I'm really most visible and active on.
Excellent. Thank you so much again. Get some sleep, and I'll reach out to you. Absolutely. Thanks for coming on, Martin.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a great joy, and I can't believe how the time was flying.
I know, it goes fast, right?
Very good. Thank you so much. And
well, listen, I appreciate how you're working to change the narrative, and I'll reach out to you when when the show drops. Okay.
Perfect. Looking very much forward to the final cut.
Excellent. And side note, my niece works in insurance, and I'd love to have her get in touch with you.
Oh, absolutely. You know where to find me, so please do.
I do. Okay. All right. Thanks again,
Thank you so much.